myself, council members Benton, Bradford, Gregg, Huffman, Kimbrough, Prepty, and Weiner. Pursuant to Council Rule 28, the public comment period at committee meetings is limited to items that appear on the committee agenda. All public comment speakers must present proof of Tennessee residency. We have one person signed up for public comment. His ID has been checked by staff. It is Steve Ryder, and he is speaking on item number RS 2025-1436, and I will turn on the microphone for you, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I hope you had a chance to review what happened yesterday, Budget and Finance Committee, where April Calvin basically tried to explain what was going on with this contract. She acknowledged there were some issues, but I think it seriously calls into question her judgment and her leadership of the Office of Homeless Services. At this time, I'd like to call your attention to the contract, Section D, and it refers to standard terms and conditions, and D8 says media interaction. Any media events or news releases connected to any work contemplated or performed relative to this grant contract must be coordinated through the Office of Homeless Services / Metro Nashville Government Communication Representative prior to engagement, airing, or distribution, notwithstanding the foregoing. And anytime you see notwithstanding out there, red flags should go up. Notwithstanding to the foregoing, this provision shall not be construed to restrict the recipient's rights under federal, state, local law, including but not limited to the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. The intent of this provision is to promote cooperation between the recipient and Metro around opportunities to create awareness and provide collaborative good work as a community. Well, what it really does is it lacks transparency. And we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in right now at the Strobel House if simple information would be provided to the continuum of care and to the public. We don't get the information. It was Mike Lacey who had to go out and do public records requests again and again to try to get some information, and he still hasn't gotten all the information. But he's the one who brought it. This should have never happened. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Appreciate your time. Okay. Very first thing we are going to do today before we get into legislation is I wanted to make sure to recognize Nashville Fire. They had a very busy weekend over the weekend with multiple fires all around the community, and one of the biggest fires was in Councilmember Weiner's district, and so I wanted to recognize her to talk about the Bellevue community response to that fire.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to let everybody know, whether you're in this room, whether you're in NFD, whether you are a constituent of mine or anybody else's, we are extraordinarily lucky to have the Nashville Fire Department, Box 55, OEM on hand with the Red Cross at these fires. They went above and beyond the call of duty. They were amazing. I stood out there with them in the 100+ heat while they were in layers and layers of equipment. And I believe it's like 65 pounds of equipment that they wear in the middle of the heat. 90? Okay, I lied. 90 pounds. That's a lot. And I was blown away at the compassion that they shared with the folks that were literally standing there side by side with me, watching everything in their life blow up in front of them. We had people who had just received their immigration papers, and their citizenship papers, and they went up in smoke. We had women who have been involved in transplantation, and she was on anti-rejection medication, thank you, and anti-rejection medication, and it went up in flames. How fast can you get that replaced? The impact of watching your life literally go up in smoke is mentally taxing, not for today and tomorrow, but for the todays and tomorrows for months and years to come. It's hard to recover from that because I remember back in 2010 when we were watching people go through the flooding where they lost everything. I have friends who still cringe when we have a tornado come through. And so it's life altering. Thank God we didn't lose anybody. We didn't lose any pets. And it was only because of the quick thinking of the people that lived in that building and because of our first responders. So we're extraordinarily lucky. Bellevue stepped up. Bellevue always steps up. And every time I'm asked that question over the last several days is, are you proud of Bellevue? I get the chills because these are people that did not wait for me to sound the alarm. They didn't wait for me to put anything on Facebook. They didn't wait for me to post on Nextdoor. What they did do is they stepped up. Many of them, a lot of the Lawson family at the high school knew folks that lived in that building, had kids. We had one young man who called his friend and said, can I borrow a pair of shoes? Mine burned up in the fire. Can you imagine an 18-year-old? It's heart-wrenching. And so we have several ways that if the community wants to help, they can. I started a Facebook group, and it is Bellevue Helps, Slate Fire Apartment Victims 2025. That is the place where people that need something who have been affected by the fire, any of those 10 families, can ask for help and list what they need. We also have people that can come in that have things that they need, and they can post that they have those items. I did this back in 2018 when they had the last big fire, and it was active until about 2 weeks ago when I took that page down. This one will be up until September 30th, and I may extend it. We'll just see what happens. We also have the Bellevue Community Foundation having partnered with the Bellevue Food Bank, and people are delivering gift cards over to the food bank that will then be transferred over to me. I will take them over to distribution through our nonprofits because we can't give it directly from the community foundation. And so that's one way. I will share with you, we have thousands of dollars that have already been provided to us in gift cards that I'll be distributing tomorrow. The next thing that we have is we have a host of GoFundMes, just a host of them. On the Bellevue Community Foundation page, there is a donate button, and everything that's donated over the next 6 to 8 weeks will go to these 10 families. If you have any questions, obviously, email me, call me. I'm easily found. And I just cannot thank everybody enough for the calls, the support, and most importantly, their thoughts and their prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Weiner. Mr. Young, did you have your hand raised to come and say something? Please come up.
Thank you, Mark Young, Nashville Fire. Council Lady Weiner, I want to thank you for your comments. And I know this is not the first fire at the very same complex that you have been on the scene. A few years ago, something very similar. Council Lady Weiner was there. I just want to thank all the council members that support NFD. That day, right before that fire, there was another large barn fire on Licton Pike. Probably 50% of the Nashville Fire Department resources was at those two scenes. But thank you, and I just want to correct, you are correct on the 65 pounds. That's with nothing in your hand. If you've got something in your hand, the tools that we carry, it's 90 pounds, yeah. But thank you for always supporting us, and everybody in here, thank you.
Thank you, District Chief Young. Wanted to also mention, related to Nashville fires, there was a terrible story over the weekend about Engine 21, who's basically involved in seeing, there was a woman who was being sexually assaulted on the steps of a church off of Nolensville Pike, and they stopped to render aid. And unfortunately, the woman ended up passing away, but another example of Nashville fire being helpful in times of need. We are getting started with legislation. We've added Councilmember Zulfat Swara, so I have marked her as attending. And I will go ahead and read the item numbers that I have on a tentative consent agenda, and then feel free to let me know if you want to take anything off. I have item number 1, item number 3, item number 4, number 5, number 6, number 8, number 9, number 10, number 11 and 12, and that is it. Does anybody have anything they would like to remove from my proposed consent agenda? Councilmember Suara, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 8, please.
Number 8, I have removed that from the consent agenda. How about any other items that need to come off of consent? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so I'll go ahead and read everything into the record. We've got item number 1 is RS 2025-1418, a resolution approving Amendment 1 to a Community Correction Services grant from the Tennessee Department of Correction to the Metropolitan government, acting by and through the state trial courts to divert eligible offenders from the Tennessee prison system by providing community-based supervision and treatment services through the Davidson County Community Corrections Program, sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and Welsh. And we go to item number 3, RS 2025-1432, a resolution accepting a particulate matter or PM 2.5 ambient monitoring network grant from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to the Metropolitan government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health to assist with the necessary development, establishment, and maintenance of adequate monitoring programs for the prevention and control of air pollution in Nashville, Tennessee. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Gadd, and Hancock. Item number 4, RS 2025-1433, a resolution accepting an air pollution control program support grant from the United States Environmental Protection Agency to the Metropolitan government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health for the ongoing collection of data on ambient air concentrations for fine particulate matter in Nashville, Tennessee. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number 5, RS 2025-1434, a resolution accepting a grant from the Tennessee Department of Health to the Metropolitan government, acting by and through the Metropolitan Board of Health to achieve sustained control and enhance prevention to eventually eliminate tuberculosis as a public health threat in Tennessee. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number 6, RS 2025-1435, a resolution approving amendment number 1 to a grant contract between the Metropolitan government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Public Health Department and Nashville Health to extend the grant term for a Healthy Nashville study. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. Item number, looks like, then I go to item number 9, RS 2025-1441, a resolution approving a clinical affiliation agreement between the state of Tennessee by and through Motlow State Community College and the Metropolitan government of Nashville and Davidson County by and through the Nashville Fire Department for the participation in clinical training of students enrolled in the Emergency Medical Services Program. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and Welsh. Item number 10, RS 2025-1442, a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement by and between the United States Capitol Police, or USCP, and the Metropolitan government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department, or MNPD, for the purpose of reimbursing the MNPD for agreed upon law enforcement services. Sponsors Porterfield and Evans. Item number 11, RS 2025-1443, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchasing master agreement with Faro Technologies Incorporated for police radar, LiDAR speed enforcement, and accident scene reconstruction equipment for the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and Huffman. Bills on second reading. Item number 12, BL 2025-953, an ordinance to amend Title II of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to codify the Office of Family Safety. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Welsh, and others. And that is all that I have on the proposed consent agenda. Does anybody have any other items that they would like to remove? Okay, I am not seeing any. So do we have a motion? All right, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone not voting? All right, we recommend approval. 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. All right, let's go to item number 2, RS 2025-1419, a resolution accepting the terms of a cooperative purchasing master agreement with Inmate Calling Solutions, LLC, doing business as IC Solutions for inmate communication for the Davidson County Sheriff's Office. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, and Bradford. Do we have a motion? Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. I know there's discussion. Councilmember Prepti, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so the reason why I pulled this off consent is that I had a couple of questions that I fielded to DCSO, which they very graciously answered for me in advance of this meeting. And so I just wanted to make sure that I'm reading both my questions and answers into the record for folks at home who could potentially have very similar questions. So the first question that I had with regard to this was understanding that DCSO currently has a contract with Securus for providing providing telecommunications for those who are housed at the sheriff's office, and looking into what this particular contract would mean for the existing contract, and what particular services and comprehensive services would we be getting for this contract. So in essence, so our current contract with Securus would end at the end of this year. However, this contract that we will be approving this evening would essentially be substituting those services, and so that contract would either end at the end of this year or whenever this contract comes into effect. And so that was the first question that I had, and it just X'd out of it. Let me see as well. The second question that I had was with regard to the information that is collected through this. So within the contract, it prohibits the unauthorized disclosure of confidential information. And so the particular question that I had was with regards to any person's name, their OCA number, which is their internal identifying number whenever they're housed with DCSO, and whether or not information such as their name, OCA, the phone numbers that they called, or phone numbers that they called and the length of those calls, whether or not that would be considered confidential information under this contract, and whether or not that would be something that would be able to be sold. And so under this contract, the assurances that I've been given is that that particular data belongs to Davidson County and would not be shared with the contract provider, and so that information would not become public and would not be able to be sold. And then the last question that I had with regards to this was about the particular rates per minute that inmates are charged for utilizing these services. Because one of the things that we know is that a large contributing factor to either reducing or recidivism is ensuring continued connection to the community. And so the cost of telecommunications can potentially be a hindrance towards people being able to maintain their integration and connection with the community. And so the particular charge under our current existing Securus contract, as well as under the new contract, will be 6 cents per minute. And so a generally reasonable rate for charging folks for these telecommunication services. So those are the questions that I had. Those are the answers that I received, and feel very comfortable with this particular contract. Because in addition to those questions that I had, reading through the contract, Metro will get an estimated, I believe if I'm saying this correctly, $15,000 in savings under this contract. Is that correct? So yes. So by and large, just wanted to make sure that I got those questions answered, and providing that information to the public who may be viewing at home. So with that, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. All right, any other discussion on this particular item? Councilmember Kimbrough, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Is there someone here from either ICS or from Davidson County Sheriff?
Is there anyone here from the Sheriff's Office? Oh, look, we do have guests. Please come to the back, and if you could introduce yourselves.
Good evening. Ruby Joyner, Chief of Corrections.
John Hudson, Chief Deputy.
Thank you.
May I direct the question?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to know, are there any provisions for people who have been deemed indigent to have their call fees waived? Is there any type of provision like that?
We do offer free phone calls for folks who can't make, there's 1 or 2 calls per month that are free. And so there are provisions that we make for folks who have no resources.
Okay, so they can make 1 or 2 calls free per month?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Okay. What about calls with their attorney? Are those free and unlimited?
They are, and they are not recorded.
So calls with attorneys are free?
Yes, there's no cost for those calls
Okay,
to the inmate, I believe.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Kimbrough, and thank you very much for answering those questions. How about any other questions on this item? All right, do we have a motion?
So moved.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone not voting? All right, so we recommend approval. 8 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Okay, let's go to item number, thank you, 7. I'm trying to be all tech savvy up here and it's not working. Item number 7 is RS 2025-1436, a resolution appropriating a total of $3.5 million from the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, acting by and through the Office of Homeless Services to DePaul USA Incorporated for the provision of property management, on-site support, and case management services at Strobel House Permanent Supportive Housing. Sponsors Porterfield, Evans, Allen, and Huffman. Do we have a motion? Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. There was a really robust discussion in budget last night. I'd like to invite Director Calvin to come up and speak to this item on our agenda.
Good evening. Director April Calvin, the Office of Homeless Services, and my admin team and program and planning. So, kind of in this situation, I explained a lot yesterday. I'll give an abbreviated version just so that you won't have to listen to all of that. Several things happened at one time, and I think this is a very complex project that Metro Nashville had never done before. Our very brand new office had never operated a permanent supportive housing either. Also, I think number 2 of the list of events that kind of happened to explain the situation was the coordination and negotiation between multiple departments, including all the way from Metro Legal to DePaul, CSH, ITS, General Services. There was a lot of different departments involved in this creating of the contract. Also, there was mixed funding resolution. We have multiple funding streams that were dedicated for this service and this scope of work. And then also the unexpected challenges of staff change while addressing encampments and operating cold weather shelter. A lot of things kind of all happened at once. This procurement process was not an ideal process. There was no funding nor a service provider that was identified initially when OHS absorbed the duties and responsibilities for Strobel House. So we became creative, and in becoming creative, we had to work on multiple things at one time. One was the contract, the other was finding a service vendor, and the third was finding the funding in order to operate this. So therefore, the initial funding that we identified was in a resolution of 2024-459. That was the initial funding. That was our top priority. And then simultaneously still working on the contract with Metro Legal. We also secured funding by way of ARPA, which is the 490 award. And about 3 to 4 months ago, we identified that Strobel award was not adequate enough to secure the vendor at that time. And so the department quickly sought the advice of Metro Legal, created a resolution, the resolution that's before you now. We're wanting to utilize that resolution to bring on to DePaul. They've been very successful. They've housed over 100 individuals, or at 100 individuals, July 14th, and I know it's a 90-bed unit. Someone asked me a couple of questions about that. It's a 90-bed unit, but as we know, people living outside, languishing outside for many years, it shortened their lifespan. So we've had 3 individuals that was their last place that they were able to live. They were at end stages of cancer, end stages of dialysis. I can't remember the third. And then there was one that was incarcerated and a couple that they moved on to permanent housing that did not need an ongoing subsidy. So that's a little bit of the data. I can send you more detailed report on that if needed. So we're asking for this resolution 2025-1436 to bring on $3.5 million to cover DePaul until June of 2026 and some retro. I understand that this was not an ideal process, so we put some corrective action in place for my team and our department. One immediate corrective action was working closely with Metro Finance and Metro Legal on aligning these contracts and ensuring smoother operations. Two, we've received approval to bring on a contract administrator, which is a higher level of training than a normal grants coordinator, which will help with contracts in the future and help with legal in that process. Three, our lovely team here is receiving some education and training by way of the state's certified county financial officer, comptroller training. And it's a year-long training, so it's very rigorous, and they've learned a lot in just the first 2 months of that program. And then last would be aligning, I know there's been some questions on direct voucher versus a PO process. As our department was set up, that was the initial process. Direct vouchers was the only process that was utilized as our office became its own office, which is what our new AD of Finance has been utilizing as well. So we're going to work closely with Mary Jo and our finance team on adjusting that as Metro moves in that direction.
Thank you, Director. I have I guess I did get to listen to budget last night. So I did hear a lot of the conversation and the questions, but one I don't feel that I necessarily know, and so help me understand. Who's your connection to, I'll call it big finance? Like, who do you all work with directly, or are you assigned anybody within central finance to work with?
Yeah, we work closely with Amanda Brown. She meets with our team at least monthly, sometimes twice a month. We work closely with her, and then we also work with Mary Jo and Wade. And we meet with them, I would say it's kind of averaging quarterly or so.
Okay, and I guess
they're all readily available when we need them.
because I think like one of the questions that I feel like I have kind of related to this resolution discussion is, and I appreciate that you have like kind of a plan of things that incremental things that you're going to do, and hiring administrator and that kind of thing. But how, other than holding, like, we could use this resolution to kind of like basically hold you to the process improvement, or we could pass the resolution and kind of trust that the processes are going to be improved and that there's attention kind of being paid from central finance. And so I want to understand kind of where was there any resolution last night related to that? Was there a discussion kind of around that? Or was there any resolution around how do we make sure that all of these things happen and ultimately, that DePaul, that we're approving them because we need them as a provider, and we also want to make sure that they get paid. So how do we make sure that all these changes are implemented? We can continue to ask questions about it. And of course, as part of like our chair transition and that kind of thing, can be noted on Chair Porterfield's side, my side, that kind of thing for the incoming chairs. But how internally do we make sure that there's that kind of connection accountability piece?
So for the contract administrator, that position closed maybe less than a week ago. So we're already in the process of moving forward with hiring that person. We received probably this week the list of viable candidates. We're in the process of reviewing that list. So that's already in place. The CCFO training started about 2 months ago, and they've already had the first 2 sessions, and so that's already in place as well. And I think that, becoming your own department, there's no manual that's provided to our department on that process, and they've learned a lot through those 2 courses. So definitely in making 100s and 90s and really competitive in that learning space. And so I can always bring you updated information on how those trainings are going as well. And then third, the direct voucher and the PO process. We're going to work closely with Mary Jo on that. Or finance.
Okay,
I'll say.
and I think you're bringing up some really good points, because I do feel like, and we've seen a couple of examples, where I think that some other directors have gotten kind of in a bit of a challenging space because they haven't had the support, guidance, et cetera, kind of like from our internal structures on how things should work. And there's probably some assumptions that you're at this level, you should know how to do everything. And I understand that that is definitely not the case. And so I'm just wanting to make sure that there's a plan. And I kind of feel, after being copied on all the emails, related to kind of the external kind of focus on this issue, and records requests and things like that, I do want there to be transparency. I want it to be as transparent as possible, because we have to have the faith, that Strobel is doing what it's intended to do. And that we have the supports in place, for those processes to work and for people to be able to have, the access to services that they need. But I'm feeling a little bit uncertain. And I know I'm going to HPC, and I know that that will probably continue to be a conversation kind of at the HPC level. But it's something that's top of mind. So I'll take any discussion from any other members. Let me go to Councilmember Suara first.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, we did have a robust conversation in budget, but I want to clarify that my questions and what I was focusing on a budget was on the finance side, not necessarily the departmental side, because I think, like you said, we've had other departments that this have happened to. And so for me, it's important that when the department make mistake, what is finance doing to catch it and to correct it? And so that was the bulk of that conversation. I really did not drill in on the department side, but listening to Director Calvin now, I really do think that in order for us to be able to move forward and correct the situation, we really have to understand what happened. So I have a couple of questions for you. My question is this: at what point did we realize, okay, so the contract that we're paying on ended in September 2024, right? But we continue to pay until now. At what point did you realize that that contract is ended, but we're still paying?
So we received the Strobel ARPA Award in June of 2024. And so that's the second award. That was, when I say mixed funding, that's the second award for DePaul. And so it was just 3 to 4 months ago that I realized that Strobel Award, and it's named Strobel, was not sufficient enough for tying that vendor to that funding source.
So the Strobel Award is I get confused, my apologies. Was that June of 25 or June of 24?
June of 24.
June of 24. Okay, and so when we use ARPA funding and we get grants, are we not supposed to have a purchase order for contracts, even under ARPA?
I'm going to let you speak to that.
Hello, everybody. Joseph Marsh. Typically, when I got in January of 24, everything was set up as direct voucher. Around that same time that we had the conversation about the ARPA ARPA resolution that went through, that was the same time they were like, most times people want to put POs next to the grant so that these things don't happen. So ever since then, we've been kind of working with finance to figure out how do we retroactively go back and add those POs to it. But before then, everything was direct voucher.
Okay, so no one in the department had an idea that it should be PO?
No.
And finance never informed you? So in those meetings that you have every quarter, do you talk about processes? Do you talk about, because here's the reason why I'm asking all this. I've gone to finance and we're going to make performance improvement at the finance level. But I also think that the department, finance is telling me that the responsibilities on the department to monitor their grants and to do what they're supposed to do. And so that's why I'm trying to understand. So based on your understanding now, there should have been a PO in place for this particular contract, but there wasn't.
That's correct. So when the ARPA the 50 million was originally awarded, probably would have been a time to make sure that every contract had a PO at that time. And I believe as a whole department, none of the, at the time when funding started to go out, none of them were set up as a PO.
Okay. And so in January, when you came is when we found that out, and that's when we've been trying to do this contract? Or when did we start processing this contract?
What was that again? I'm sorry, what was the first
When
part?
did we put this so at the points where we realized that we needed a PO, why are we just getting the contract now?
So when we realized we were doing the PO was like April said about 3 months ago. That was the first time that we had heard that a PO should be attached to the contracts that we do. So we've been working to go with that model. But of course, we want to make sure this resolution went through as well while we're working out that, because that's not something we've done, but we want to make sure that when we work with finance, it's set up for those retroactive contracts that are still on ARPA funding and on top of the one that we're about to do now.
So how many other contracts do you have that you've been paying with direct vouchers instead of PO? Do you know, other than the poll?
I would say the contracts that are executed, we have not done a PO with. Like I said, when we got established as a department, it was direct voucher process was the only one that was in place for us. So having a PO was something very new to us that we do want to go towards because it does make sense and it's the right way to do it, but we weren't aware of that at the time.
Okay. My last question, and then I'll wrap up. Director Calvin, there was an email that was sent to us by Mr. Lacey a while back, and I know that you did respond to that email. And if I remember correctly, your assertion was that all of the acquisition were incorrect at that time. At that point, you were not aware that it should have been by PO.
Well, thank you for allowing me to clarify. I think the very bottom part of that email really clarified that that was the one thing that we had just figured out and was looking to rectify that situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So to have it on record, like my colleague, Councilmember Prepti did, and for those that do not understand, the red voucher is how we pay people that we use it for utilities, things that don't need a contract is what we use the red voucher for. When we have a big contract like this, we're supposed to have a PO in place. Metro system is set up to where when we set up that PO, there's a date stamp and an amount stamp. So you can never pay outside of the date and you can never pay over the amount. What happened in this particular instance and what we're finding out is happened with other contracts and maybe even other department is that when department use the direct voucher, there's no way to tie the date. So we have contracts that were being paid, that the contract is already ended, and that there was no money for the PO attached. That was, I mean, when I saw it, initially when I read Mr. Lacey's email, like many of you, I thought that's not possible. That would never happen in Metro. There's so many systems in place that could never happen. And then in conversation with finance is when we find out that this actually did happen. And so we're now at a point, the conversation in budget yesterday is that I've been talking to finance a whole bunch. So finance at the finance level will be doing training for the department to make sure that everybody understands the difference. But one of my questions was, what if they've missed it or what if they just don't do it because they don't have money? So now they're going to a system that we now have opportunity to tag a vendor and says, if you see the poll, it can only be PO. And that way, department will not be able to use both. The other thing that they're also doing is that they now, and we had a strong conversation, the people that are approving direct voucher should be able to look and see the expense category and said, does this expense actually match a direct voucher? That's another thing that they're doing. And then the third thing that has come out of all of this conversation is that Atlanta and New York has a system called Checkbook, where you can actually go online, put a vendor name, and see all of the transactions for that vendor. Metro has a similar system, but I think the system was not updated maybe by August last year, I believe. But now, based on my conversation with Ms. Wiggins, that system will be updated, not only brought up to date, but the vendor name will also be attached. And so I understand, you know, things happen at the departmental level and then all of this will be corrected. It looks really terrible for Metro. I was shocked, and it's bad that it's an outside person bringing it to us. But we are now on track to continue to do things both at the departmental and the finance level to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Councilmember Suara. We'll go to Councilmember Welsh.
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me, even though I am not on the committee. I have some questions more about just awareness of what is going on. It kind of boggles my mind that we would not have known, or someone in the department would not have known that you were operating without a contract. The original contract was for 3 months and for $500,000. We continued to pay for an additional year, and I'm trying to understand how it never, with invoices that were very clearly backdated and signed off on, that no one thought that $500,000 would not be actually funding that under that original contract. I mean, how does something like that just get missed? Is there no oversight of this at all within the department?
So there was two resolutions, and so the second resolution is the Scobey resolution, and that was the funding that it was being paid out of that was approved by Metro Council.
Again, that invoices were very clearly backdated, and there's no mechanism within Metro and in our charter to actually pay backdated invoices. That's actually something that we're not allowed to do in Metro. That's very disturbing. When the contract expired in September, less than a week later, we had a stabbing in Scobey House, which gives us Metro a great deal of liability. There were no security cameras, there were no anything when this happened. That opened us up to liability. And I'm not quite sure why it took so long to get a new contract in place, given that the changes between the two contracts, there's a lot more legalese, but they're not fundamentally that different. One thing that is not in the new contract is a grants tracking form. There's not one included in this new contract. Most of the other changes are adding a few other safeguards, and they do add that clause that does not allow anyone to talk to the media without the express permission of OHS, which is problematic in and of itself. I still have more questions about this. I don't even know how to formulate them at this point, but I personally am not comfortable with just approving this contract tonight on the floor because I feel like there are a few other questions that we need to get answered, and as to your point, Chair, to make sure that we really do have a series of safeguards that we can follow to make sure that these things that are supposed to be addressing this issue and what happened with this contract doesn't happen again, till we can assure that those are actually in place and moving forward. So that's just my opinion on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Welsh. Any other questions on this one? And hello there, Ms. Wiggins. So you may have heard some of our conversation. And so I guess one of the questions that I asked kind of before Councilmember Suara was kind of giving us a debrief of budget and the discussion around that is kind of where, like I hear what Director Calvin is talking about related to improvements that are going to be made, and I totally support all those things. But then I also go, well, are we going to be double checking? Are we going to be making sure all these things are happening? And so can you speak to that as a representative from finance, that we can be reassured that there's going to be more evaluation, I guess, as things go forward? And let me turn the table on over there. There you go.
Great, thank you. Mary Jo Wiggins, Finance Department. So I think there are probably two main things, which is the responsibility of the departments across Metro. We do have policy about the way that we pay contracts. Now, this was a grant contract, so it is different than a traditional vendor contract. But I think much of you are wondering, well, how does this happen? If a department is using a direct voucher, that direct voucher is approved at the department level. And so finance doesn't have any insight to that. There's a policy about when you can use a direct voucher and when you should be using a purchase order. Purchase orders are used against contracts because then finance is approving those, and they actually then get, if you kind of think of it as attached to the contract. So it would prevent a contract from from invoices exceeding the value of a contract. It would also prevent a contract that's expired from being paid against. In this case, the department was using direct vouchers. So we talked about it, and that was how they were told to do it. We have a policy, it's out there. We rely on the departments to monitor contracts and to follow policy, But I don't think this was a case that they were aware of the difference. Again, this was a grant contract, so it is a little bit different. In our conversations, there was not any, I didn't get any sense of intentionality or egregious behavior. But the second piece of this that I think many people have asked is, well, what can we do to prevent this from happening? I think it's education, it's additional training, but also finance has, many of you have heard we're going to Oracle Cloud with the new calendar year. So we will launch Oracle Cloud from our current R12 system in January. And we've been looking at what guardrails can we put in more from a system perspective that, yes, we still rely on departments with education and training and knowledge and following policy, but is there something within the system that could, catch this? And so we can, with a very big lift, and you're probably going to hear about need for additional staffing, but we can create vendors that are PO only. So if you have a contract, a vendor is approved for a contract, that vendor would be set up that they can only be paid by a purchase order. So that way, finance is involved in the approval and payment of that invoice, and that invoice is directly attached to that contract. So we would have to go back with our entire supplier list and identify purchase only versus direct voucher vendors, make those changes in the system, test it, et cetera. So it's a big lift, but it's the right thing to do. And so we knew, we found out with our Oracle partners that yes, that is a flag, a switch we can turn on in the new system. And so that will be coming. And in the meantime, we continue to have conversations with our departments about education, training, POs, and direct vouchers.
Thank you for that explanation. And then I guess from a process perspective related to this legislation, what if we deferred it, if we didn't pass it tonight, what happens then? Do we still just pay DePaul out of this direct voucher process, or how does that work?
I'd say so you continue to be in violation. We still have a contract that wouldn't be in place. The only way to not be in violation would be to not pay them, which would mean close Strobel House. Shut it down so that the vendor isn't so that we're not in violation of paying a vendor. I don't think that's what anybody wants to do. So I think it would be best to shore the gap. We have an issue with there not being a contract. Let's get the contract in place. If there are any other questions specifically about it, I feel like we've had a lot of conversations. We can answer them tonight. And we've learned, collectively and move forward with the right policies and procedures in place with more education. But I don't think we want to continue having a gap in our contract period.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions, Councilmember Suara?
Thank you, Chair. I was going to move for a deferred budget yesterday, but I decided not to because all of my questions have been answered and I've been involved extensively in this. But there are other council members that felt like they still have other questions, and I think that it is important for them to have the opportunity to ask those questions and get them answered. I'm okay with, because like I said, we spend a lot of time talking about this. I can get there, and I think there's an appearance of impropriety here. When it looks as if you're supposed to pay 500, you paid $1 million. And looking at it on the surface, it makes you go, oh my God, right? That's where I was. I'm not there now because I've had the opportunity to sit with Ms. Wiggins and get all of that answered. So I think for others that want this, that have the same question, I think it's good to give them that opportunity so that we can clear it and move forward. So my question to Ms. Wiggins is that how often do we pay vendors? Is it on a monthly basis?
Yeah, they're being paid daily.
They're being paid daily?
The volume of our Metro Payment Services, so departments approve invoices and they are sent to Metro Payment Services, which is accounts payable through finance, and they're paid daily.
So, for this particular contract, I look at the payment that we paid them. We've only made like 7 payments. Even at the beginning of the contract, we paid them like a lump sum for the first part of the contract. So if we have 2 weeks, it should not delay the payment that long. That's what I'm trying to figure out, that with the 2 weeks deferral messed up the next payment that badly?
I'd have to look. I believe we're paying DePaul monthly. And so if we're nearing that month payment, it could delay, you could be at a 60-day delay in making a payment. But the issue is also they're there providing the service. If you think of it from an accrual basis.
Yeah, we owe them the money. And that's why I said I'm okay, but I do think that I've heard, and another council member just said it now, that they would like to ask more questions. And so with that, I'll move for a 1 meeting deferral.
Okay, we've got a motion for a 1 meeting deferral. Do we have a second? Okay, we've got a second. It looks like I'll go to council member or Chair Porterfield.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Sora, for all of your questions and due diligence. I'm speaking against the deferral. I have the utmost respect for Councilmember Sora, and I do think that we have to have transparency, and that's why we have committee meetings, and people could watch the committee meeting yesterday. People could attend this meeting today. We have mechanisms to get questions answered, and I do think that there are times when a deferral is appropriate because there is more work that has to be done. Anyone that had questions could reach out to finance to get those questions answered. They could reach out to Director Calvin. They could come to the meeting yesterday. They could come to the meeting today. We owe this money, and we need to rectify this situation. And it's not fair for us to continue to provide services, and we are possibly delaying people from getting paid for the services that they are rendering. So if we have the opportunity to correct this, I think it's incumbent upon us to do that and to move forward with that. I think that, again, these concerns could be addressed in the appropriate committee. Right now, we are having a budget and finance conversation in a public health and safety committee meeting. I think that is highly inappropriate, but here we are. So here we are.
We're going to have the same conversation on the floor tonight. You know, that's how it's going to be. So
Completely agree. And I think that's appropriate in a full body meeting, but we are talking budget in a meeting where all of the budget people are not here to have that conversation. But again, here we are. But as far as the deferral motion, I don't think that it is appropriate to do a deferral motion preemptively. If we have the answers that we need, we can go forward with this legislation. If somebody on the floor who didn't attend these two meetings wants to move forward with a deferral, that is an option as well, and we'll have to deal with it, cross that bridge when we get to it. However, I'm speaking against the deferral. I'm voting against the deferral. We need to move forward with getting people paid. We do need to hold all of our departments accountable. So this is in no way saying that we need to give any director a pass. We don't need to give any department a pass. We need to hold every department accountable, whether it's finance, which I love, but whether it's finance or whether it's OHS or whatever department, we have to hold our departments accountable. So I'm not saying to give anybody a pass, but we do have to keep the train on the track and continue working while we are holding our departments accountable, and we cannot delay processes and paying vendors.
thank you for your feedback. Councilmember Suara, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. For clarification, the vendor is not owed. The vendor is being paid. That's why we're here. And so we didn't owe them. That was why I asked Director, Assistant Director Wiggins, when is the next payment due? Okay, we don't owe them. We've been paying them. So I want to make that clarification. They're doing the work and the department find a way to pay them. And so if the next payment is not due for 2 weeks, then the deferral would not hurt anything. So that's why I was talking about monthly payment. So I will ask, I still renew my motion. Again, I'm fine with it. I said it, I'll say it again. I've asked all the questions that I can ask. But for the sake of those that have not and that wants to, that's why. But I will also ask Director Wiggins if they can, before tonight's meeting, help us find out when the next monthly payment, they are paid monthly. So when the next monthly payment is due, so that at least we'll have that information as we make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wiggins. You're welcome to answer.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to ask, OHS may already know that. I don't know if you know what the payment cycle is. We can definitely look it up, but.
Yeah, so they are on a monthly reimbursement. So the reimbursement typically, I think, comes before the 5th of each month. So we're in the process of a billing right now, putting it off 2 weeks. Could hinder for what August reimbursement would be around September.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggins, and thank you. I thought I saw Vice Chair Huffman's hand raised. You're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. And just want to echo my colleague, Councilmember Porterfield's sentiments against a deferral here. At the end of the day, I think that there's no doubt that there was some mistakes that were made. I really am concerned more with the residents at Strobel and having an interference of service. That's the thing that I keep thinking about. There's questions that definitely need to be answered. There ain't no doubt about that. But I would vote that we move forward tonight and get those questions answered later. And I will commit to that as well as the incoming chair, Councilmember Suara.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, there's a motion for a one meeting deferral. All those in favor, please say aye. Got one. I'll support you. Two. Two in favor for a deferral. All those in opposition, please say aye. Okay, 7 opposed, 2 in favor, 7 opposed for a deferral motion. Okay, well then we're going to go ahead and move on. That fails, of course. We're going to go ahead and move on to the actual legislation. So RS 2025-1436. All those in favor of this item, please say aye. Anyone opposed? I'm sorry, was there anyone opposed? No. Okay. We recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, 0 not voting. Okay. Let's move on to item number 8, RS 2025-1440, a resolution approving a memorandum of understanding between the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security, or TDOSHS, and the Metropolitan Government of Nashville, Davidson County, by and through the Nashville Fire Department, or NFD, for training participation of TDOSHS personnel in the EMT services provided by the NFD, sponsors Porterfield Evans and others. Do I have a motion? Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. Any discussion on this item? Councilmember Suara.
Thank you, Chair. Again, repeat what I said in budget yesterday. I did take a look at the detailed contract, and it does says that the fire department will hold the Tennessee Department of Safety liable, or at least they're not supposed to release information, people names and information that they come in contact with during the performance of the service. Also in budget yesterday, Councilmember Allen did ask if NFD has the opportunity to be able to pull out if THS is not, or THU, whatever all this acronym is, TDOSHS did not do right by the contract, and the answer from the fire department is yes. So I do get all of that, but personally for me, Department of Safety, Tennessee Department of Safety in particular, having access to people's information, being in people's homes in this climate and everything that we've seen from the Tennessee Department of Safety, I cannot support this, and so based on that, I will be a no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other discussion on this item? All right, do we have a motion? Everybody's falling apart here. And do we have a second? Okay, thank you. All those in favor of this item, please say aye. Anyone opposed? We got 2 in opposition, so we recommend approval. 7, and 1 abstention. So that's 6 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 abstention. So we recommend approval on this item. Let's go to our last item, and then we have the final speaker you'll have to hear from me for this chairmanship. Item number 13 is BL 2025-955, an ordinance to amend section 9.20.020 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws regarding motor vehicle noise within residential zoning districts. The sponsors are Ellis and Huffman. Do I have a motion? Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. I do have a letter from the sponsor who has asked for a 1 meeting deferral. Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of a 1 meeting deferral? Anyone opposed? Anyone not voting? All right, so it's unanimous. We recommend approval. 9 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. All right, we are going to transition to our guest today, who's been waiting patiently in the back. We actually have 2 guests. We have recently retired Officer Faye Okert, who is a school resource officer. And then we also have recently retired therapy dog, Sergeant Bo, who are here. Is he tired? Is he sleeping? And so I think what might be easier, since Bo just recently had surgery, is if you come down to the front. I think that if I pull out one of the chairs and give you the microphone down there, it'll be easier maybe than you trying to come up here and him sit. I was thinking like Berkeley's chair, to like pull it out, put it in the center, and then we'll give her that microphone. Yes. I would say he's going to put, Brian, could you slide the chair up, like kind of more in the center? And then, unless you want to stand. You don't want to stand, do you? Here, yeah, we'll let you sit, and we'll get. And then can you hand her that microphone? Okay, so we're down here in the front because Sergeant Bowe recently had surgery, and so he is recovering from a torn meniscus. And I'm going to turn on Councilmember Berkeley Allen's microphone, so that way we can use that for our conversation. So the first time that I ever met Sergeant Bowe was on a school bus, and we were coming from the Pencil Foundation, where Sergeant Bowe and Officer Okert had been principal for a day at Davidson Elementary School. And that's an elementary school in District 12. And I immediately knew why I was not asked to be principal for a day at Davidson Elementary School, because they had a chance to have Sergeant Bowe instead. So Officer Okert and Sergeant Bowe recently retired from MNPD. Officer Okert after almost 35 years of service to MNPD. And so I wanted her, since we have talked about SROs kind of related to grants and all kinds of things that we have passed in this committee, we've never actually had a conversation with an SRO. So I thought, what better pairing than to have them come in today. So Officer Okert, could you explain kind of to the committee, I guess, how you got into working for MNPD and a little bit more about your background?
I started the police academy February 1st of 1991 and graduated June 27th of 91. I spent about 8 years working patrol on the streets, most of them on midnights. Then I became a detective that worked child abuse, infant death, and sex crimes. After that, I've spent 18 years as an SRO in the schools.
And could you tell us more about, what your role was as an SRO and kind of some things like around, what schools, like I know you went to Dodson because it was in my area and I saw you on the bus, but what other schools did you go to, and were there certain schools that you went to more than others and those kinds of things?
So the SRO program is designed, you have 2 officers in a high school, 1 officer in a middle school, and now they're starting officers in an elementary school. So originally, for up until the last 2 years, I was assigned to, there was a few different schools. I spent 10 years at Isaac Litton. So basically, as an SRO, it's kind of a unique position. You wear a lot of different hats. You don't work for the principal, you work with the principal. You still work for the police department. But your main job is to keep the school safe. Obviously, the doors, anybody that comes in the high schools, maybe the weapons that come in. But I think just as important is building relationships with the kids. You kind of bridge a gap between what some of them may think about the police, what they've seen on the street, what they've seen in their house. But I think building a relationship. So actually I never worked at high school, but I do know some high school officers. One of them has a general store where he buys candy and the kids, that's how he builds relationships. There was a middle school officer, she would have Lego lunch, and the kids would buy the opportunity with their school bucks to come have Lego lunch. And those lunches were full every time she had them. For me, I kept a basketball machine in my office at Litton. And for me, it was about that I would identify the kids that maybe they were runners or they were they had issues. And those were the ones I would make friends with. They would come into my office. There was a little boy that I bought Pop-Tarts for every day. And that way, if they had some issues, instead of running out of the building, they would run to the SRO. So I think most importantly is building the relationships, which I believe help the street officers because they see us in a positive way. Hopefully that will carry over if they get in trouble or they need the police. So the last couple of years with my partner here, I actually was not assigned to a school, and we would just visit. We had the first year we visited about 57 schools. So after that, I think the last year we just had a group of schools that we would visit. Some of them usually once or twice a week.
Yeah, and I know it's a little awkward for me to be back here asking the questions and you feel like you have to talk to me. You don't have to. You can talk to everybody else because I know that's a little strange and I'm back here asking and you're answering. And kind of, and you referenced your partner. So can you tell us a little bit more about, first of all, how you got your partner?
So there's a program out of Brevard County, Florida, and they take dogs that aren't going to get adopted out of their, basically, I call it the dog lockup. And they spend time with inmates and trained, and then police departments come in and work with them. So it was approved for the school section to get a dog. I think it was July. When it was approved, it was July 2022. I got into the December class, which thank goodness it wasn't the September class, which is the class I wanted to be in, because my friend here was a stray roaming the streets of Florida in September of 2022. He spent 3 months at the Brevard County Sheriff's Department being trained by inmates. And honestly, when I got a picture of him the week before I went to Florida, I said, I'm not taking that dog. He's ugly. People are going to make fun of me. Don't judge a book by the cover. And that's the message I've passed on to kids, is just because a new kid comes in and you don't like what they're wearing or you don't like what they look like, give them a chance, because I almost lost out on a great pup. So he came to work January of 2023 with me.
Yeah, and so can you talk a little bit more, because you were an SRO for years before you, got Sergeant Bo. So how does it work to incorporate a therapy dog into kind of the work that you were already doing?
So prior to getting him, it was about when all the riots and the protests and everything started happening. I actually could have left then and almost left to go to work for Sumner County Sheriff's Department. But it was kind of a mission where you had so many kids that hated the police, and they didn't even know why they hated the police. So I kind of set out on, I was allowed to go to elementary schools, eat lunch. I played football with the boys. We would do basketball, sidewalk chalk, whatever it took with the elementary school kids, because I'm a firm believer in that's where it's got to start. Nothing has worked with our young people. So we start in the elementary schools. So I spent a lot of time doing that. Then I get him, of course, my football and basketball days were over because I had a leash. But for him, he doesn't have to say a word. He does more than any adult or anybody can do in a situation just by laying here. There were several people that walked in. He just makes you feel better. And that's what dogs do. And that's what we did in a lot of the schools. I think it was the second month that I had him. There was an elementary school we were visiting, and there was a little boy. They had kind of were carrying him down the hallway. He basically wouldn't respond to him, and I take it that was a common thing. And so I had him sit him down on the floor, and just like he's laying right now, he laid in front of this boy, and I sat on the floor. And I don't know, I got to ask him questions. He wouldn't respond. He wouldn't look at Bo, anything. We sat there for 17 minutes until finally he reached out and touched the leash, and then finally touched Bo and got to talking to me. And so I said, hey, do you want to walk him to the office? They said, look, if you can get him back to class, get him back to class. So he walked Bo to class, and we went in. We made a big deal out of how he invited us to the classroom, and everybody got to pet the dog. That's what the dog is good for.
Yeah, and you all have had a lot of experience in Bo's tenure before he had to retire, with some really tough situations. And you all were a responder for Covenant School. So can you kind of speak to kind of the relationship that you built, at Covenant?
So I had only had him for 3 months when Covenant happened. Actually, he was a stray 6 months prior to Covenant. And so we got there that day. We got to the reunification site. And I can remember one of the commanders said, okay, I want y'all to get on the school bus. When they get here, each bus, explain to the kids that they're safe and what's going on. And first off, I've never been in a situation like that. This is a dog that, as far as I know, had never been on a school bus. He'd never been in a situation like that. He was phenomenal. Got on that first bus just like he was the driver, walked right down the aisles. The kid paid attention to him. We stayed there with the kids until the last person left that church that day. And he has a trading card, and all the kids were getting a trading card. Some of them probably had 5 before they left. But he laid with them. They laid on top of him. And I knew that we had made a difference when they came back to school. They didn't go back to, they went back to the church where they were doing school. And I was there that day. And they were getting out of the car and they were coming up calling him by name. And so I thought, how in the world do you remember a dog's name after that type of tragedy? And the parents were coming out of the car and they were saying, well, this is what my child talked about. They didn't talk about the shooting. They didn't talk about that day. They talked about this dog named Sergeant Bo. Nothing that any adult could have said that day could measure what he, just by laying there, he didn't have to say a thing.
Yeah, that's a really good story. And of course, I've read that multiple times, which is one of the reasons why I wanted you to talk about it in here. So thank you for sharing.
We go back. We were, every time that, like, there was a Georgia shooting, we went and spent time at the school that day. They had a bomb threat one day. We went and spent time. We were going once a week just to greet the kids. We would stay for chapel. He would do just like he's doing now. He would just lay there. So we've just built great relationships. There's a stuffed dog back there, looks just like Sergeant Bo. They both have the same bandana. Every student and staff member at Covenant got one of the dogs.
Yeah, I saw that. Also, one of my friend's children is a Covenant child who was in the classroom and has one of those. So I know it's very meaningful to the students there. And I know, I guess from my exposure, like, obviously, I know what an SRO is. I know what a therapy dog is, but I really had not heard about therapy dogs with MNPD until you all came along and I saw you on the bus. And so is this a program? Are there other therapy dogs within MNPD, or are you all the last therapy dog?
So the section behavioral, it's a section inside the police department where the officers go for counseling and stuff. They have one, and they had the first through the same program. And then, of course, the schools picked up. So we had him and another one who have both since been retired.
Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing that. And then, I guess one of the last questions, and I'm happy to open up if anybody else has a question other than me. What are, based on your long tenure of experience of being a school resource officer, what are some things that you think that we could be doing to better support students in our schools?
No, you sent me that question. Honestly, I have no idea. The kids come in, they see a lot in their neighborhoods. They see a lot at home. I don't think the majority of us realize. I did, because I spent 18 years in the schools. We have kids. We send them off to school. We know they're safe. They've had a good morning. We fed them breakfast. We all did that with our kids. And these kids don't have that. They might see somebody in the morning before they get on that bus. They don't have breakfast. There may have been an argument. There may have been something at the bus stop. They come into school. Obviously, there's they've had a rough morning. There's a lot of trauma in some of the students. So I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that. What questions, if any, do any members of the committee have for Officer Okert and Sergeant Bo? Or did we cover everything?
I will say that once Metro gets officers in the elementary schools, I honestly do believe that we get to bridge a gap in the elementary schools. They get to become friends with the police officer, and they do. The officers are great. They build relationships. It's not, I know people say, well, officers are in schools to make arrests. Even 18 years, I couldn't tell you the last time I made an arrest on a student, because that's not what I was there for. I was there so that they saw us in a different light, so that if they got in trouble, then they would think about the officer they had in the school. I'll tell my age. I actually have parents that would come up to me, and I had them as an SRO in the 5th grade, and then I had their kids as an SRO in the 8th grade. And I've had students come up to me as adults and say, you were my SRO in such and such school and such grade. That's the impact that school resource officers make on kids.
Yeah, that's a pretty profound impact. And for some of you in this room know, I used to teach 10th grade and I didn't last long enough in the school system to be able to have that kind of experience, but I know how meaningful it was for staff members and everybody that I worked with when that would happen. And so that's pretty cool to hear that you had that experience too.
Yes, he makes more of an impact than I did before, though. Trust me. And there's nobody, I go places and I'm like, oh, that's Sergeant Bo. And I'm like, yep, I'm his handler, hey. And so I'll plug this. I know you put flyers around. The American Humane Hero Dog Award. He has made the top 5 out of hundreds of dogs in the therapy dog category. So they picked from his story, because this is a stray dog that became a hero to a lot of people. So he's in the top 5. Now it's up to a public vote. So you can vote every 24 hours until September 15th. The winner will come from the public vote. And I'll say this, we're up against a Los Angeles, California dog, a New York dog, a New Jersey dog, and a Florida dog. All have big populations. And here we are with the little bitty Nashville dog. I do believe it'd be a great honor for Nashville, for the police department. I just have to get people to vote. So she left a flyer. There's also, you can go onto their website and I will send you the code. You have the code where you can click on it, vote for Sergeant Bo, and then it'll tell you can come back and vote again tomorrow at a certain time. So I can't tell you where we are in the vote because they don't let you know. But I can tell you that if he wins that category, he actually goes to Palm Beach, Florida for a red carpet gala formal event, and they will pick out of the 5 winners of the 5 category, they will pick one dog that's top dog, and it airs on the Today Show.
Pretty cool. We can't let those big city dogs beat us. And I will say, I put it in my newsletter, and I was telling Officer Okert before we started that so many people replied and said, hey, Aaron, your link's broken. Here's how you actually vote. And so people are interested. And they, of course, out in our area in Hermitage, they're big supporters of Sergeant Bo and Officer Okert with her presence in our schools out there. So it's a little awkward. And hey, Vice Chair Huffman, would you come up here? Would you mind grabbing these? So the council office was very nice and helped me prepare a proclamation to honor you and Sergeant Bo for your retirement. And so I'm going to read it really quick.
Wasn't what I wanted.
Well, I'm going to read it really quick. Whereas Officer Faye Okert joined the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department more than 34 years ago and faithfully served in multiple capacities, including patrol, detective, and sex crimes investigations. And whereas Officer Okert transitioned the role of school resource officer to school resource officer over 18 years ago, dedicating her service to Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools and building lasting connections with thousands of students. And whereas through the Brevard County Sheriff's Department's Paws and Stripes College Training Program, Officer Okert was partnered with Sergeant Bo, formerly known as Chopper, a service dog who became her steadfast partner beginning in December 2022. And whereas, though initially reluctant, Officer Okert later reflected on their pairing in a February 8, 2024 Tennessean article saying, I judged him and he's making me pay for that. And I tell these kids, don't judge a book by its cover because you're going to miss out on something great. I almost missed out on something great by calling him ugly. Whereas together, Officer Okert and Sergeant Bo visited schools daily, supporting students and the staff in managing emotions, encouraging literacy, and fostering trust, achieving a milestone of 200 school visits, with Sergeant Bo earning a Therapy Excellence certification from the American Kennel Club. And whereas their service extended beyond routine visits at public schools, as they were called upon to provide comfort to the Covenant School community following the tragic 2023 mass shooting, establishing a continued relationship of care and trust with its students, families, and staff. And whereas Sergeant Bo was recognized, further recognized as First Responder Paws Therapy Top Dog by FHE Health in Deerfield Beach, Florida, for his contributions to mental health and well-being. And whereas in 2024, Sergeant Bo sustained an injury that prematurely ended his therapy dog career, leading Officer Okert to retire with him, concluding her distinguished career with MNPD. And whereas Project K-9 Hero, which assumed Sergeant Bo's medical care after retirement, affirmed that he calmed children struggling with cancer, comforted staff through threats and bomb scares, and reached people who would never speak to a police officer but would gladly kneel to pet him. His quiet presence changed hearts. And whereas the students, faculty, and staff of Metropolitan Nashville Schools have been strengthened by the dedicated service of Officer Okert and Sergeant Bo, whose partnership exemplified the ideals of public service, now therefore be it resolved that I, Aaron Evans, District 12 Council Member of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, County, do hereby recognize and honor the retirement of Officer Faye Okert and Sergeant Bowe and commend their faithful service, unwavering dedication, and lasting contributions to the youth and families of this community. Signed today by several council members. And we really appreciate your service. Thank you so much. Let's give Officer Okert and Sergeant Bowe a round of applause. Thank you very much. And I'll have some final remarks, but I would love it if you would stay in the back, Officer Okert, so that way I'd love to get a picture with you before you go, and with Vice Chair Huffman and everything. And Officer Okert gave us some candy, and so she's not trying to bribe us for our votes, but I will have it at my desk. Now she's saying maybe she is trying to bribe us. And we also have a gift from the committee for Sergeant Bowe, some dog treats. So I'll give those to you whenever when we get situated. Okay, nobody else did this in any committee, but I'm going to do it. And I had some final chair remarks. And so I actually wrote them down, though, so I wanted to make sure that I got everything out that I wanted to say. So first of all, I wanted to thank Vice Mayor Angie Henderson for trusting me to lead this committee over the past 2 years, and to former Vice Mayor Jim Schulman for first giving me the opportunity to serve as chair last term when I hadn't even been on the committee, which that was a leap of faith right there. This role has been both humbling and inspiring, and is deep in my respect for the women and men across the nearly 20 departments that our committee works with. One of the boldest recommendations I have for the future of this committee is that we should eventually be divided again between public health and safety and go back to them being separate. Obviously, that's not going to happen this term, but for the future, I really think it needs to be reevaluated because there's too many departments. There's too much going on. A lot of these departments have a very heavy lift when it comes to discussions, and it's been, I think, a lot to shoulder and will continue to be a lot to shoulder for future Chair Huffman. And because, I guess one of the things that I wanted to mention that really it's for everybody's sanity in the future, and luckily our next chair doesn't have to worry about his hair, unlike me, who is now at a monthly dying situation here. So some of the things that we've done together this year, that we've welcomed more than 20 guest speakers, which I know some of you have not enjoyed all of our speakers, but we've had a lot of learning opportunities. We've learned from Chief Public Defender Martisha Johnson, Pat Shea, Amanda Clellan from Thistle Farms, Adam Rosenberg from ABG Real Estate, Lisa Sampson and Kelly Fox from Metro General Hospital, among many others. Each one brought insights that shape legislation, inform Metro government, and helped us better understand the health and safety challenges our community faces every day. But ultimately, I think one of the things that we have done that's been probably the coolest, in my opinion, is that we have really elevated some key partnerships from this committee. And so Mental Health Cooperative is one of the most substantial partnerships that we've elevated. And their partnership with Metro Police through Partners in Care and with the Nashville Fire Department through both the REACH program has completely changed how Nashville approaches behavioral health in the criminal justice system. And I think we should all be very proud of that we've continued to elevate those programs this term. Leaders like Mike Randolph from Mental Health Co-op, Captain Anthony Brooks from MNPD, Brooke Haas and Eric Gallup from NFD are showing us what real collaboration looks like and the difference that it can make. We've also really elevated the work of Erica Burnett and Shekinah Stacy with the Community Foundation and the Village related to community safety. And this was a project that was first incubated in Mayor Cooper's office, but the Community Foundation has really turned it into a true incubator for nonprofit leaders serving marginalized communities. And it's been building, I feel like, lasting impact. We need more effort around some of these organizations that are doing good work in our communities. And so I appreciate Hal Cato at the Community Foundation for enabling that vision as part of that transition. And then, of course, as I've talked about many times, we have the life-saving work of Sergeant Hotz, Mike Hotz from MNPD, and Benton McDonough from the Office of Nightlife. and of course, all of their teams. It's not just the two of them. But with the introduction of 1 boxes for naloxone distribution, Nashville is now a national leader in overdose prevention and response. And with just a $20,000 investment that was supported by this committee and also with Chair Porterfield's support as part of her substitute budget, 1 boxes now cover our not entire, but entertainment district, all the sports venues in Davidson County and every Metro Nashville public school. And so they've already saved more than 11 lives, including just this past Sunday morning, a 20-year-old young man in downtown Nashville. So it's something that has provided ongoing dividends. And so we made a modest investment. We paired it with a bold idea, and now we've seen lives being saved. And so that's the kind of creativity we need more of in our government. In particular, around modest investments, bold ideas, being joined together. And so that's the kind of thing that we need. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Trevor Henderson with the UT Public Policy Institute. When I first became chair last term, he was working for Metro Health and asked me a simple question as a new chair: would you like to understand how overdose deaths are impacting Davidson County? And I said yes, and that led to a lot of other, I think, really great work that we've been able to do in here. We've also made strides in addressing domestic violence, thanks to Diane Lance and Becky Bullard of the Office of Family Safety and their partners across the courts, DA Funk, Public Defender Johnson, the sheriff, and nonprofits like YWCA and the Mary Parish Center. We've helped them highlight the need for critical funding to strengthen our response, and that ultimately has meant real resources that we have supported, real progress for all of those organizations and the court system, and hopefully more survivors who are going to feel safe and supported. And so thank you to the mayor's office for including their requests, and to Chair Porterfield and Chair Gadd for their efforts to include even more support in the substitute budget. And of course, we faced a lot of challenges in this committee as well. Public safety is a complex, ongoing conversation. So how do we balance staffing needs, the use of technology, and investments in the heart of our communities, including libraries, parks, and community centers? And my belief still remains, even after these 2 years, is that we have to do the work to solve both crime and also support communities. We've also navigated some senior leadership changes in our departments. We have a new director of the Metro Public Health Department, and Dr. Sanmi Ariola, and a new interim director at Metro General Hospital, and Dr. Veronica Elders. And both have stepped up at a time with local public health and healthcare options, and that are becoming increasingly important with a federal government that, is really a unique combination of both anti-science and hostile to poor and working class residents. So we have become more important at the local level than we ever have before with these healthcare leaders. And of course, one of our biggest hurdles that we have been dealing with and will continue to deal with is trust. Without trust in government and in leadership, we're really not going to have anything else work. And we've seen that play out. We saw it with our FUSIS vote and with the unresolved complaint against MNPD and its impact on community oversight. And so ultimately, one of the things I would say is that it's been over a year, and the investigation that's been led by Ed Stanton of Butler Stowe still has no public report. The 130,000 voters who created the Community Review Board deserve answers. And ultimately, as we were talking about before, transparency shouldn't be optional. It's really essential in order for us to move forward. And while it may sound really small in comparison to the weight of all of these other issues and departments, another pressing issue that we really have to get our hands wrapped around are spay and neuter in Davidson County. Our animal control facility is stretched beyond capacity. Residents are constantly being turned away. As I mentioned, I think when we got started, I'm tired of being, animal control officer, number 40, in my district. I just think that we really need to figure out and get creative on some of our solutions around spay and neuter services. And I'd also like to see us kind of treat that with the same urgency we have brought to other serious issues like COVID vaccinations. We can do significant spay and neuter in Davidson County if we have the political will. So looking back over my 2 years as chair, one thing I believe we've truly missed is a dedicated public safety policy role in the mayor's office. During our budget hearings, we heard a commitment to restore this position, and in my view, it is long overdue, and I've already got a reminder set for next year's budget hearings if that position isn't filled. I think we desperately need it. I shouldn't be the linchpin on some of these issues kind of at the council level. And the last thing I wanted to mention is a little housekeeping. We've had some attendance issues in here, and we've always met quorum. We've never had any issue with that, but we really need more than quorum. There's so many departments that really need your engagement as leaders. And so I would ask if you could, for Chair Huffman, please show up when you can, ask questions, and be as curious as possible, because your presence really does matter, and the city really benefits when you're fully engaged. So ultimately, I really appreciate the opportunity, your trust, the challenges, even when I've been on the negative side of the challenge, and also the collaboration that we've shared. And I'm going to look forward to having some bandwidth to focus on some of the issues that this committee has raised, because I'm going to have both plenty of time and plenty of opportunity, and that might be bad for some folks to be on the receiving end of. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity, and I know our new chair, Jordan Huffman, my neighbor, is going to do an awesome job. So I look forward to supporting you. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned.